This reaction is going to be another request from one of my viewers, and this is the top 8 culture shocks when moving to Australia.
Right, let's give this a go. So you've heard about the deadly animals, scorching sun, impossible isolation. What was the other one? And sausage and bread, and you're still thinking that you want to come
Sausage and
to
bread
the land
sounds
down
so
under.
good.
Then
That's what we eat
prepare
in
yourself
Scotland.
for these weird Australian culture shocks.
That wouldn't be a culture
G'day guys,
shock
my
for me.
name's Ross, and I moved with my family to Australia during a global pandemic. Now I love living in Australia,
You moved during
but when we
COVID?
first
Wow.
moved over here, it was a little bit weird. Now to stop things being so weird for you when you make the move, these are our top 8 culture shocks when moving to Australia. Australians love their sport, but unless you're from Australia, sometimes the sport is a little bit strange. For example, football isn't football. And I'm not really talking about soccer, or am I? It really freaks me out to say the word soccer. For me, I know what football is. And for Australians, they also know what football is. But when you move to Australia, just resign yourself to the fact that you're now probably going to follow the minority sport and also need a
that's
special
true.
subscription just to be able to watch it. Football in Australia can mean many things. Football for me means soccer, but football in Queensland means rugby league. And if you come from one of the southern states like Victoria
Aussie
or
rules.
South Australia, then football can mean AFL. And I still don't understand how that game works, but I want to learn. You can still have a beer at an AFL game, right? But if you come from the UK like me and you still want to watch your beloved football, then you're going to have to become a social hermit bound to the wee hours of the night just to watch your darling Premier League. If you don't like it, then take up one of the other many forms of football. And if you're American, well, they also kind of play baseball and stuff too, but probably not your form of football. It'd be like too hot in all the pads and stuff. Or imagine getting a spider in your helmet. Ooh. The second shock that we had.
Yeah, man, for surely if I moved to Australia, and that's actually something I would consider. Like, as you probably know on my channel, I live in Malaysia. In the next year or two, me, my wife and my children are probably going to be moving either back to UK, but Australia is definitely one of the options. I would absolutely throw myself into being an Aussie rules fan. I don't know about rugby, any of those types of rugby. They're not really any. It's not something that's actually grabbed my interest since I've been young. But Aussie rules, as soon as I made videos about it and learn more about it, I would 100% be going to the matches. I'd have a team. I'd be like, it's such an exciting sport. And that, if I moved to Australia, definitely I would be loving that.
Coming from the antisocial rest of the world is the fact that in Australia, people are actually friendly to you. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, people are friendly in other parts of the world, but Australians are kind of like this weird level of friendly. People greet you on the street. Neighbours come up to your house and welcome you to the neighbourhood. People actually offer you help. Now for me, being the antisocial hermit that I am watching my Premier League, people being friendly to me was a little bit weird and it just took a little bit of getting used to. But when it happens to you in Australia, it really does make you realise how nice the world can be. Now hey, you're going to think to yourself, people around the world are nice, and lots of them are. And you normally notice it when you're on holiday. Maybe it's the weather that makes people happier. Because I can tell you that the dreary
Maybe not.
darkness of winter kind of makes people the opposite. To be honest, this is one of the best culture shocks of Australia. Calling all social recluses out there. If you move to Australia, it's going to make you a better person. No one wants your social awkwardness or unfriendly banter. Australians are genuinely friendly, unless they don't like you. But there's no beating around the bush. I'll tell you straight. Now, coming from the northern hemisphere on the other side of the world, having a cold Christmas.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, that's one thing I mentioned also on this channel that I visited Melbourne a couple years ago. Every single person I met or had interaction with in Australia was just super nice. Like, and it's that what, as he mentioned, they were genuinely positive and felt like genuinely interested in talking to you. It wasn't like, you know, I'm from Scotland, so I feel like Scottish people are also very friendly. We will talk to anybody and just like give them respect. But I've lived in Asia for the last 10 years, 3 different countries, China, Thailand and Malaysia. When I went from Malaysia to Australia for a trip, it was like night and day. I felt so happy every day in Australia. The people are just amazing. They actually just make me feel like so happy just to be there, man. So I can totally understand that, and I feel like it's a genuine positivity that Australians have.
Becomes a rite of passage. But here, cold Christmases? Welcome to the heat, my friend. Christmas in summer. It's hot. Really hot. If you don't have aircon, you're gonna struggle. It's not dark. You and your family aren't just confined to one room watching each other open presents you probably didn't even want. Wishing that the TV was on so that you wouldn't have to make awkward conversation with family members who you hardly ever see apart from the festive time. Wondering to yourself, is it too early to start drinking yet? The fact is that with Christmas in Australia, you get to take all of the good bits of Christmas, like presents, and spending time with family that you actually want to spend time with. And then add all the good things of summer, like going to the beach, spending time in the pool, having a barbecue in the sunshine. Don't hang on to your old traditions of Christmas, like your roast turkey with all of the trimmings. I mean, do hang on to them, but don't whinge that you're doing it in the heat. Have a barbecue instead. Savour the wonder that is a potato bake. Why did we not have these in England?
What is
Or
a
if we did, I
potato
never
bake?
had one. They're gorgeous. Make new traditions and embrace the fact that Christmas in summer is now your new life. Now, coming from Cosmo.
That's like, actually, I made a reaction to his video about the difference between Australian and British Christmas, and although I'm like this very traditional Christmas enthusiast, I love that cold Christmas, I like the snow when it snows outside, being cozy and warm in the house, I would definitely be up for having an Australian Christmas and having the two Australian Christmases, the one in the middle of the year too.
Cosmopolitan
Sounds
Europe.
great.
I was kind of used to this next one because people on the continent sometimes like to have a siesta, but at least they opened up the shops and stuff again. Now I know that this can catch out the average Brit visiting Marbella for the first time and wondering why in the middle of the day all the shops are shut, but in Australia it goes to another extreme and shops just shut early. Want to get a coffee after 4 p.m? Yeah, nah. Don't be crazy, why would you need that much caffeine in your system at night? It's gonna go dark in a couple of hours. Want a takeaway after 9 p.m on a Friday? Well, you better live in the city centre. Ain't no one going to work after 9 p.m. in the burbs. You crazy? Unless you're in the major cities, things in Australia are rarely 24 hours. People have a life. They don't want to sit there waiting in a restaurant or a shop for your convenience. Don't be so selfish. Why aren't things so convenient? Well, it turns out people don't actually want to work all the time, and you need to respect that. Get a bit more organised. Enjoy a night in. Realise that that thing you think you need, you probably don't need right now. I'm sorry that the shops shut early, but if you don't have that thing you want right now, is the world going to end? Probably not. And if it was that important, you wouldn't have forgotten it, right? And this culture shock extends into the next one.
I think that's a good point actually, because I think looking at it, it can have good points and bad points. I think similar in the UK, places do shut relatively early. Here in Malaysia and Asia, like places are just open all night. Like the malls close at 10 p.m. every day of the week. They've got like 24-hour restaurants, they're called mamaks, where they serve like Indian food. So you can go there midnight, during the night, you can eat. And it's good to have that. Like it's very handy to have that. But on the other side, you do think about it. You don't really think normally from the worker side that they should be allowed a life too. So I think that's got good points and bad points to it.
And it's the work culture. And weirdly enough, most Australians don't like to work. I mean, they do. They do like to work. That's a massively sweeping statement. But fortunately for people who live here, we don't live to work. Working to live is an incredibly emancipating feeling. What's the point in going to work all day to earn money to then not have the time to spend it? I don't want to live a life like that, do you? Especially when you have all of this fantastic weather and beautiful scenery to spend it in. Except when it's a La Nina year. Like, the scenery's still there, but the weather's still a bit crap, and it has been for the last 2 years. Fortunately for most Australians, this laissez-faire attitude to work extends to lots of different industries. If you're sick of the daily grind in your job, then come to Australia and you can do the same thing but not work as hard. Wouldn't we all want to just do that? But sometimes this incredibly laid-back nature can lend itself to some slightly weird / potentially unsafe habits.
That actually sounds better for me, man. Like I definitely am a more like work to live type of guy, man, not live to work. I like my work-life balance. That's one thing that's hard because in Asia it's just expected that you do long hours. Even if you don't have that productivity, you have to show face. But for me, even working over here, I've always been very straight to the point. It's like I will work my contracted hours, I'll get all my work done, I'll be very efficient, I'll work as hard as I can in those hours, but I'm not working late, man. I like my life, I like my have it going back and just going out for dinner and having a nice time. Australian life sounds good to me, man.
Barefoot in public? That one takes a little bit of getting used to. Especially living up here in the
Barefoot in
sunshine
public?
state of Queensland, seeing people go barefoot in your local Coles can be pretty much a daily occurrence.
Yeah, that's what I heard on one of the previous videos I seen the girl mention about people walking in public with no shoes, but I only very briefly, I wanted to find out more, so this is very interesting.
Lots of people do it, especially children. It's like they've got an allergy to shoes or thongs. Just put some thongs on, mate. Protect yourself.
But is the
Now, for us
ground not
foreigners who are used
burning
to wearing
hot?
shoes anyway, just to keep our toes warm. Seeing people go barefoot in public and it's not the beach or a swimming pool can be a little bit weird. But actually, rather than criticising or wondering if they've got asbestos in the soles of their feet, don't criticise.
Just do.
Join them. Everyone
Yeah, man.
talks about that feeling where you can spread your toes in the sand and how liberating it can be. Well, just go barefoot in public, mate. You get that feeling all the time. Except when it's the middle of summer and you step on that black tarmac.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
what I was
put your thongs
thinking.
on then. Now, if you
Jeez.
thought going barefoot in public was rather informal or slightly offensive,
Yeah, that's quite. I never actually knew that. I don't think when I visited Australia I ever witnessed that. That was in Melbourne, so maybe it's not so common in Melbourne. But yeah, I would go for it, man.
then
Definitely.
wait until the average Australian speaks to you. Don't get me wrong, most of them are educated, eloquent individuals, but the average Aussie does love a swear. I even do it on the radio. The first time
Same
I
as
heard
Scottish
on
people.
the radio in the morning, I was wondering if my driving was okay or if someone was shouting at me in traffic.
On the
No,
radio?
it was the person on the radio. I've even heard them drop the odd which can be wholly confusing to some of the people watching this that don't even know what is. They can say on the radio, yet I'm cursey enough to bleep on my videos. What a beautiful country we live in. Now don't get me wrong, they don't go for the hardcore stuff like or bugger. Wait, bugger isn't really that bad, is it? Oh, I've buggered this up. But most Australians will drop the C-bomb at you as a term of endearment.
Same in
As a
Scotland.
I know that for
We
lots
say it
of
all the
people
time.
when they watch Game of Thrones, dropping the C-bomb was a big taboo. And if you don't like that word, sorry, Australia might not be for you. Because in Australia, lots of people like to swear and everyone's so you better get used to it.
I
don't think I've
feel
ever
the
used that many
connection
bleeps in a
with
video
Scotland.
before. I really hope I bleeped all of those out. Now the last one is something that's awesome, but also one of my little pet peeves. In Australia, they have some of the best containers for sauce. In those little foldy things that just squeeze out perfectly. What an invention! But in Australia, if you want the privilege of sauce, you have to pay for it. Want some tomato sauce, mate? Yeah, that could be 15 cents, please. Or 30 cents if you want two. Because they're like really small packets. Now don't get me wrong, not everywhere does charge for sauce. Thank the Lord. But lots of places do, and it's pretty common practice. If you're like my wife that just loves to slather everything in tomato ketchup, then not only calling it ketchup is going to be weird in Australia, because it's tomato sauce,
Yeah.
as I've been told many times when I get that confusion.
I even
look
see that
asking
in
for
Scotland
ketchup.
too,
But
tomato
like going
sauce.
to America and having to pay for something and then add on the sales tax, if you want sauce, you're going to have to pay a little bit more. But the good thing is we don't have to tip, because everyone gets a fair wage, and Medicare, and gun laws. What a beautiful country Australia is. Now if you're thinking of moving to Australia and you don't want to live in Melbourne or Sydney, and you think that like us, Brisbane could be the place for you, then watch this video to wonder if Brisbane is really worth going to.
Interesting. I really like that. It was very good to like find out these interesting things, especially going barefoot everywhere. But I love the sound of Australia, man. The lifestyle, everything about it, the people. It's such an enticing country, man. Like to actually want to move to and set up a life. So watching guys like this actually gives me a lot of inspiration, and having that potentially be an option for me also. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you like about living in Australia. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Thanks.